Hey everyone, I'm new to the YouTube scene. I've been wanting to do an artifact video for quite a while and just haven't gotten around to it. So we're having a really nasty day down here in South Central Texas, and I figured I would just do it today. Before we begin, I'd like to thank a few folks on YouTube for being an inspiration of mine to do this. Richard Rockhouse, Creek Dalton, Flint Spall, Pistolman 1951, and then some of the Texas guys, Rich Relics 13, Hill Country Digger. Really appreciate you guys posting the videos and showing us, you know, your collections and taking us along for the ride. I really feel like it's important to share these artifacts. You know, they're not doing anybody any good if we just throw them in a coffee can and stow them away somewhere. So again, I really appreciate it. All right, I guess sort of an intro to this site before we begin. Every artifact that you're going to see here was found on the same site in South Central Texas. It's primarily an early Middle Archaic site, so everything is pretty much between the 4,000 to 7,000 year old range. So anyway, I'm going to start off with the monos, and here we go. I'll start off with some of the grinding stones, or monos is what they're called. Just kind of go through them one by one. I'll try to keep it somewhat short, but you can see here this thing has been just ground smooth on that side. Now some of these are kind of damaged. We've dug these from a burned rock midden, which is where they cooked. It's basically an ancient oven, but so some of these are damaged, like this one's been burned pretty bad, but here's a nutting stone. Got a little divot on that side, but here's a good one. I think you can see that. Pretty cool. I don't know, we've always speculated on what they were using these for. I don't know if they were, you know, literally using these to nut like pecans or cracked pecans or acorns or whatever, but I don't know, maybe they dulled their, you know, spears with these, or who knows. If anybody has any ideas, let me know. This one's not a nutting stone, this is just a big mono, but you can see how it has the big, just the smooth polish. These are all limestone, by the way. Limestone at this site is very abundant. These are all limestone. This is probably the best mono that I have from that site. It's actually made out of granite. There's no granite in the area, so this was definitely traded. I think the closest outcropping of granite is probably like 70 miles away or something like that. But you can see just how smooth it's been polished. And it's really interesting, it has these kind of like just these little flat spots all over it where they ground, I guess facets almost. There's one on that corner. I mean, just the whole thing is pretty cool. And another common artifact that we find at this site are these little, I guess you call them choppers or hand axes. Got a whole bunch of them here. This is more of like a, I guess a scraper or a blade, but pretty cool. Work on that edge. Here's a little chopper hand axe. And you can see on all of these tools here, they all have cortex on one side, and then on the other side they have this just real crude, choppy, you know, smasher end, if you will. And I mean, look how it's just been battered. I mean, they've really been smashing something up with these. But again, there's the cortex and there's the chopped up end. Another one, same deal. Cortex. Here's a little one. And they've really been going to town on something with this guy. Yeah, it just fits in your hand perfect. This one's kind of like a, I don't know, like almost like a Kerrville knife or something. It's got some pretty good work. I don't think this was actually a chopper here. I think this was more of a, I think they were doing some cutting with this rather than smashing. But and one more here. That's a really good example. Fits just perfect in your hand. And there's all kind of brokes. Whole bag of tips here. Real nice. There's some preforms and tools, things like that. Here's kind of a little, I call it the ruffian bag, bunch of little rough guys and some kind of burned up, broken stuff. Whole big bag of bases and midsections. There's one really cool one in here that's made out of quartz. Wish that thing would have been whole, but let me get to these points over here. These are the better whole stuff, for the most part whole. Probably all of these are 90% whole. This is it's an early middle archaic site, so everything that we find here is probably from the 4,000 to 6,000 or 7,000 year old range. I'd say the most common point type that we find are Nolans. Some really good examples of Nolans here. These two are Nolan. And what makes, you know, the key characteristic of a Nolan is that it always has a beveled base, oppositely beveled base. So most are always have a right hand bevel. There's the beveled side right there. Flip it over. There it is there. It's a really nice point. There's a Nolan. These are all Nolans here except for that one. I think this is actually a Martindale. He's missing a little ear down there, but definitely not a Nolan. As you can see, bevel there. Some of them don't really have a very distinct bevel, but a lot of them do. You know, this one distinctly beveled. Here's one that's really not as distinct, but it is a Nolan. These guys up here, those top three are Nolans. Pretty interesting. Most of them, like I said, have a right-handed bevel. This big guy here actually has a left-handed bevel, so I've always wondered, you know, was it a lefty that made this? I guess you could also consider this or classify it as a pandale because it's alternately beveled all the way down to the stem. Some of these that we find at this site have been alternately beveled like that all the way to the stem. I mean, all the way to the tip. Some just have the stem beveled. This is a pretty interesting point here. Nolan, definitely a Nolan, but he's a little bit crooked. I don't know if you know, it was a bad impact fracture that they reworked, but it's got a needle tip. I don't know, I guess it could have been used as a little knife or something, but one of my most interesting points, that's for sure. Here's a Nolan drill. Actually found this in two pieces. The stem there, or the very bit end, was broke off, and I found it about a foot away, if that, from the base. You can see the nice bevel on that side. Let's see. Other point types at this site are Travis, Uvalde. Here's a couple of Uvalde examples. They kind of look like Pedernales, but they predate Pedernales by 1,000 years or so. There's a Travis in the middle there. That's probably a Travis. Actually, no, it's a Nolan, but probably a Uvalde. This is a really nice point. I don't know if that's a... I don't know. Some buddies and I found a couple points like these there, and I don't know if they're reworked bell points or you know, Merrill or what I don't know. They're really nice. You also find a lot of these oval guys out there. Well, that one in the middle, that's a Travis, but those other ones around him, they're quite common. I'm almost sure that they're preforms. We don't find any. I don't think they were throwing these as projectile points. We haven't found any yet that have impact fractures, so they're most surely preforms. These two here I found on the same day, probably not even 6 inches apart from each other as I was digging the midden. And it looks like the guy, this is a preform. And he never finished that one, and he finished this one. It's a Nolan. Nice Nolan. And there's a couple nice blades. The wider one there is 4 1/4. The longer one is 4 1/2 exactly. This is pretty cool here. Prismatic blade. I was pretty excited to find that. I don't know if you can see the work, but they were most certainly using that as a knife. Oh yeah, I wanted to show you guys this one. This is kind of a oddball of the group here. I have no idea what this is. We have found a couple early triangles there at this site. I think we have only found 2, or even, you know, pieces of, I think 2 total is what we have found, but I don't know if this guy is an ET that's been worked down into a drill or what that is. But if you have any ideas, let me hear them. It's kind of beveled. I like it though. And this guy here is a... I almost didn't even pick this up, but it looked peculiar, and it's actually an arrowhead. It's probably the smallest, well, definitely the smallest point that we have found out there. It looks like a Nolan, like the world's smallest Nolan. It's beveled there. You can see it on the right side. Flip it over, and it's beveled there on the other side. And if you look, it even has an impact fracture. That looks like a little impact fracture, but tiny, tiny little arrowhead. And we've got some other peculiar stuff. Here's a weird point. I have no idea what that is, but they were notching it, and still has a little bit of cortex right at the tip, so it was never finished, but pretty interesting. Pretty nicely made too. I'll show you the work on this blade here. This thing is pretty. Look at the curvature and the bevel on this thing. I mean, if that's not a twisted blade, I don't know what is. It's pretty. All right, one more. I'll show you this one. This is kind of a one of a kind. I think it's either a variant of a Uvalde or a I believe the book calls it a Merrill. Merrill, technically, they're supposed to have a one ear or tang that's bigger than the other. These look pretty equal in size, but I don't know about that one being bigger than the other. I think that was just an accident, but that's my opinion. But I'm gonna call it a Merrill. Definitely early. It's got an impact fracture. Okay, y'all. Well, thanks for bearing with me there. Hope to post some more videos soon. Hopefully some other points and things that I have. But again, I appreciate you watching, and good luck digging.